Good evening and welcome to this special evening broadcast. Riya Chakravarti is now out on bail. A lot has been said by the court in its bail order. Some very important points that have been mentioned by the court in the bail order, which we are going to touch upon later in this broadcast. But two stories that are developing right now. Story number one is the forensics panel of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences as well as the CFSL concluding that Sushant Singh Rajput died by suicide and not by murder. Now this has not been accepted by the family. In fact, family's lawyer spoke to the media just a short while ago. Let's quickly show you these graphics as to what the family has to say. They say that there should be a fresh medical board which should be constituted to review the autopsy, form new medical panel to review the viscera reports because they feel that this particular panel has not done the same. What is the, there is a larger point over here as to how many times will we carry out this forensics investigation into the cause of the death, and if there is a doubt in the minds of the family, then should it be done again or not? So that's one point. The other story is of course bail for Riya, and in the bail order, the court has said a number of important things. It says applicant is not guilty of any offence involving commercial quantity, not guilty of financing illicit trafficking of drugs, all those allegations against her. By the way, no other criminal antecedents against Riya, hasn't forwarded drugs to somebody for monetary benefits. And there was also a point where the court basically went on to say that we can't give her exceptional punishment just because she is a celebrity to make an example of. The law must be equal for everyone. And I think this is an important point. For all those people who are baying for the blood, even if she is an accused, should this be the way a person must be treated? That is going to be a debating point in just a short moment. Let's quickly play out this reaction from Sushant Singh Rajput's family's lawyer, Mr. Vikas Singh.
We on behalf of the family have written to the CBI director to constitute a fresh forensic team to look into the reports prepared by the Cooper Hospital. If it is by hanging, also there can be murder, because even if it is by hanging, murder cannot be ruled out. And the easiest way to do death by hanging, which will be murder, is by making somebody unconscious and then hanging him from wherever he is found to be hanging. Suicide is a question which only the CBI could have taken, and this AIIMS team had no right whatsoever to give any comment that it is a case of suicide and not a case of murder. जरूरत पड़ेगी तो हम कोर्ट में भी जाएंगे इस निष्पक्ष जांच के लिए और एक प्रॉपर फोरेंसिक टीम के गठन करने के लिए.
So you've heard the statement of Sushant Singh Rajput's family's lawyer, Mr. Vikas Singh, who seems to say that the manner in which the forensics team of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences has gone ahead and basically concluded that this was death by suicide and not murder is something which is not even in its domain. Now, whether that is correct or not is something which is a subject matter of debate. But the larger point, how many times will there be a forensics examination of Sushant Singh Rajput to ascertain whether this was murder or suicide? And if the family doubts this particular version of the forensics experts, then should there be another probe? Can this expert panel of doctors conclusively prove and also convince the courts that this is the reality? Will the CBI, what decision will the CBI take? Remember, Vikas Singh has written a letter, the family has written a letter to the CBI director asking them to reconstitute this special panel of experts. Will that happen or not is going to be very, very interesting, because very rarely do you see something like this happening in an investigation. This has been an absolutely complicated story panning out for the past 4 to 5 months. Let's quickly tell you what exactly the All India Institute of Medical Sciences has said as far as Sushant Singh Rajput is concerned. They've told the CBI that SSR's death is a case of suicide. The AIIMS board submitted no SSR murder report to the CBI on Monday. The CBI probe also finds that Sushant Singh Rajput's death is actually suicide, not murder. CBI sources also have told NDTV that circumstantial evidence rules out Sushant Singh Rajput's murder. CBI and AIIMS have found no evidence of foul play in Sushant Singh Rajput's death. And it's a very important point that needs to be mentioned here. that CFSL experts who were pressed into service by the CBI and also the AIIMS doctor panel have both found the same thing, and they have suggested the same to the CBI. Now the family is not in agreement with what has been said. Now, what does Sushant's family say? What had they alleged in the Patna FIR? Let's quickly tell you that also, just to put the story in perspective. The Patna FIR was against Ria Kin for abetment of suicide. So as of this moment, as per law, even if the conclusion is that he died by suicide, there can be an investigation as far as abetment of suicide case is concerned. Sushant's family alleged that she cheated, that is Ria Chakravarti, cheated him financially, mentally harassed him. Of course, these are all subject matter of investigation by various agencies. Sushant's family accused her of abetment to suicide. The father said that Ria had complete hold over Sushant and managed his bank account. The Mumbai police has given a version. Vikas Singh has spoken just a short while ago, as you just heard. All right, let me introduce our first guest this evening, Mr. R.M.R. Sundaram, senior lawyer of the Supreme Court. Thank you very much, Mr. Sundaram. You've heard what Vikas Singh has had to say as far as this story is concerned. Karuna Nandi, top lawyer, advocate of the Supreme Court, is also with us. Thank you very much, Ms. Nandi, for joining us. And Dr. Jaskaran Singh, head of Department Forensic Sciences, Lovely Professional University, is also with us. Mr. Sundaram, let's begin with you first. Two things that are happening, and I want your opinion one by one. Number one, Ria Chakravarti, in the bail order today, the court it lists out in its order that you can't have exemplary punishment given to someone just because he is a celebrity, as mentioned or as asked by the ASG. The court says that the law must be equal for everyone. In that context, Mr. Sundaram, do you feel that at some point, whether it was the media or the administration or the ASG or the various arms, there was some amount of witch hunting to which the court said no?
Well, I believe that in this case there has been a huge hue and cry which has been raised against Ria Chakravarti. This hue and cry has been raised in some way to implicate her in the death of Mr. Sushant Singh Rajput. The evidence did not point towards that, so therefore they went on to money siphoning, money laundering. ED got into the act. They did not find that also till now. So thereafter the NCB, whose role is meant to be to look into big drug issues, drug trafficking of big traffickers, international smuggling, suddenly found it was very important to find out who in Bollywood is consuming drugs, obviously as one of the ways to at least get her on that charge. The fact is, and I said it before, when the FIR was filed, and having seen the first complaint, I said there is nothing in this complaint on which she can be faulted. In fact, the complaint went on the basis that she was getting drugs for her partner, for Mr. Sushant Singh Rajput. And in fact, I even said this. I said what unfortunately started as a Justice for Sushant campaign has now ended up as though Sushant Singh Rajput was a complete drug addict who had all his friends' jobs were to procure drugs for him, and who was a depressive. Now, at no time was there really evidence of death. But let me tell you something. What should have been a clear, straightforward investigation went completely awry because, first of all, the lackadaisical manner in which the Bombay police dealt with the matter, declaring a suicide almost immediately in the way they went about it, rather than waiting and investigating. It's a death by natural cause, unnatural causes, in which case you must investigate it fully. Now, what has happened is the Bombay police obviously failed miserably in this, which is why the public opinion, the media, everybody started a tirade and said, what is the police trying to hide? What it seems to me is, it's not that the police were hiding something, but they were completely negligent at the first instance. Now that the CBI has come in, and after all, don't forget, the plea of the family was for a CBI probe. They've got the CBI in. They wanted a forensic team. The forensic team has come in. And I think it's going back to the fact that it was a suicide. Now, if the Bombay police had done their job, investigated it, done a complete forensic, and then come to the conclusion it was a suicide, I don't think all this would have happened. Unfortunately, due to their negligence and their really shooting off from the hip and declaring it a suicide immediately, a lot of questions arose. But unfortunately, in that entire matter, a woman's life has been totally ruined because of the entire attack on her. Look at what all she's been accused of. She's been accused of murder. She's been accused of money laundering.
Yeah.
She has been accused of siphoning money. And then she's been accused of having got drugs. Now, in the drugs, unfortunately, what it appears is that Sushant Singh Rajput, I'm only talking about the investigation, and I feel very sorry that this has been done to a man who has died. His reputation has been ruined after his death. What has been done by this investigation is that he was a drug addict who was absolutely dependent on drugs and who used people around him, who used his friends, who used his partner to get him drugs.
Procure drugs.
And today what the Bombay High Court has said, I think based on the, in fact, I must admit that when I referred, first time when I think I was on your channel or another channel after the FIR, I said exactly that. I said there's no proof of anything at all here, but maybe they'll unearth proof, which obviously they have not till date. And it's very sad that a person who is accused of having consumed drugs at worst, which is a very minor punishment under the Act, because these people are victims more than actual, it's the suppliers, it's the traffickers who are the guilty ones, really guilty ones, who should be taken to book. But the sentence here is only 6 months and it's a bailable offense. Now she has spent 28 days in jail to appease what appears to be a baying for her blood. And I do believe that in that context, what the judge said is that
and not just by agencies, Mr. Sundaram, but also by a media smear campaign. Many would ask this question as well. Ms. Nandi, would you like to come in on that?
And there was social media. Social media also. Don't only blame the electronic media
as well,
of
which the Mumbai
channels.
police is now probing.
It's a social media. It's the people who are baying for her blood.
Miss Nandi, do you feel that this was a classic case of Miss Riya Chakravarti being at the receiving end of a collective angst, God knows to justify what, of a section of the media, of a section of the social media, of a section of the public, and also the government agencies?
There was a campaign which was ostensibly for justice for Sushant, but it ended up being a campaign of injustice against Riya. And who was complicit? Not just the media, not just a huge number of accounts that were apparently created just for this purpose, as the University of Michigan study shows, but also as the Michigan study shows, that they were BJP-powered accounts. Now, this is interesting. The media, the mainstream media, I think, was very much complicit in this. And I think everyone should take responsibility and should introspect that when there are particular leaks, when there are particular stories, when a government agency indulges in selective leaks during proceedings, whether it's during investigation or during a trial, that you take it with the greatest skepticism and examine it on its own merit, keeping in mind that a leak will be coming from a particular perspective. What troubles me the most, I think, in this matter is the subversion of justice. Because what the NCB is meant to do, it only has about 50 to maximum 100 people altogether, personnel, right? Is that it's meant to prosecute high-level crime, high-level drug crime. It's meant to bust syndicates of traffickers, not go after someone who at best is alleged to have procured non-commercial amounts of cannabis, right? In the case of Riya Chakravarti, I think the matter has been so egregious, and there has been such an egregious subversion of justice, that it deeply troubles me that nobody, it appears so far, is going to pay for it. Why? Because she's not going to bring defamation cases against the media. She doesn't have the bandwidth, frankly. You know, only powerful men seem to have this bandwidth. She's not going to be financially compensated for the kind of destruction of that's happened to her reputation. If she is acquitted by the end of it, as she should be, she is unlikely to bring sort of cases of, I mean, we'd have to see, malicious prosecution, whether it is against the family or whether it's against, whoever might be, whether, also for damages against the state. Because you know what? The state is all powerful, and could it get her involved in further problems? Was she, from the beginning, protected by the NDPS Act and the immunity that is provided under Section 64A? Yes. Because even if she had procured this amount for personal use, then she would be protected by that legal immunity. And it's very important. Because as drug addicts, if they say that, look, I'm not going to do this anymore, and if I'm going to go into rehab, get complete immunity, right? So what the High Court has done is that the High Court has examined all of these issues and also set aside the very surprising arguments that the ASG made in the High Court, that if you happen to know that somebody is taking drugs, that you are then obliged to report on them on pain of criminal prosecution. So that argument has been summarily dealt with. The argument that she would, even if she was guilty, that she would face any sentence, that has been dealt with. The fact that, these wild allegations that she was possibly part of some syndicate, that has been dealt with.
Right.
So, yes,
but then obviously the bail order seems to be comforting for a lot of people. See, we have to admit that she may be out on bail, but she's still an accused. So she's not out of the woods in the literal sense. But still, be that as it may, even as an accused, you cannot subject a person to what Riya Chakravarti was subjected to. That type of campaign which was launched against her.
Let me just make a limited point here. See, the rights of the accused are innocent until proven guilty, not even if she is an accused.
Absolutely.
As an accused. Yes, she's innocent until proven guilty. Now, the thing is that when we discuss media trials, I think the media has had a very salutary role to play in particular issues. For example, in the Hathras case, right, where there's a particular kind of bullying that is happening by the state and concoction of cases and sedition, etc. I'm not saying that the media needs to judge on merit. I think that where there is a massive imbalance of power, the media needs to look very closely at what the evidence is, not prejudge.
Okay.
For example, there's a dying declaration.
Sure. Ms. Nandi, just one moment. Dr. Jaskaran Singh is also with us, and I want to ask him this question as far as the forensics examination of Sushant Singh Rajput to ascertain whether this was a death by suicide or murder. Mr. Singh, Dr. Singh, I want to know from you, when have you heard that there is one investigation by Cooper Hospital, then another investigation by the forensics team, then another one by AIIMS panel of doctors, and now still not satisfied, there is again an appeal for yet another investigation to ascertain the reason for death?
Yeah, sure. Just wanted to apprise very importantly here is that particular issue that people are saying that yes, AIIMS is competent enough to give such kind of reports and all. So that's very important.
Yeah.
But I wanted to throw a light into it. Irrespective of any reasons, it has been discussed that it is suicide or abetment to suicide. So just wanted to know as a forensic point of view, then there are certain signs and symptoms. I usually discuss this thing again and again in the media and all. There are certain specific signs and symptoms for that particular asphyxial death of hanging. So just wanted to know that what that particular signs and symptoms were present at the time of autopsy. And moreover, yes, we have very competent professionals in this particular field in our government. So definitely something will be ruled out. And that particular ruling will be submitted to the court, even to the CBI, to know that what corroboration can be done possibly to give a fruitful and meaningful judgment. So that is very, very important thing, that what all particular forensic evidences has been encountered, and it has to be critically and thoroughly examined properly in order to maintain a proper chain of custody. Yes. The proper chain of custody is the most important and crucial
Dr.
part.
Singh, Ms. Nandi, Arima Sundaram, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. So two different aspects that we were trying to discuss and make sense of how things are panning out. But thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. We're stopping for a short break. All the news related to IPL up next.